Thank you, Rob. I'll now call our committee of the whole meeting, March 13th to order. Is there any declaration of interest related to any item on this agenda? Okay, not seeing any. And again, you can declare it at any time if one should arise. Business arising from minutes. We have had a notice of motion to consider a joint municipal services committee. Councillor Body, would you care to move that, please?
Here we go. Thank you, Deputy Warden. Yes, I'll move that.
Good. I need a seconder. Councillor Eccles. Okay, Councillor Body, please.
Thank you. So I'm moving that we get a report back from staff containing terms of reference to establish a joint municipal services ad hoc committee to look at shares approaches to address challenges that municipalities in Grey County encounter. What I'm visioning is a small ad hoc committee that perhaps would review the policy that Laura has been referring to that was somewhere around 2012. I remember Warden McKinley at the time coming to our councils to talk about it and to identify maybe different areas that we could work on that we're all doing together that we could, or all doing individually that we could do together. Often we will get together socially and say, there's something we could work on that we should be working on this, and then it fitters away. I know in the past there's been libraries that were looked at. We've looked at waste management and it got stalled because we were waiting for a grant. I'm sure there's other things there that we could look at how we share, how we do it better together. I don't want to throw too many ideas now because I want the ideas to come in from everybody to be looked at. I foresee the small committee looking at maybe a list of things and coming back to council with that list, or reaching out to all of our lower tiers to get those ideas and pull them together. Which is something that's a committee that we can follow up on, and it isn't an idea at Roma that goes away and that we lose track of. Thanks.
Thank you, Ian. Fitters away. That never happens in government, does it? Yeah, maybe once or twice, maybe. Any comments, questions? Councillor DeBreen.
Thank you. Good morning. And through you, I just wondering, the bringing back a terms of reference would then outline what it might look like, what the composition could contain, that it might encompass other municipal staff. Normally we discuss the possibility of establishing an ad hoc committee and then do the terms of reference, but I'm thinking that through you to Councillor Body, that your idea is to flush out what it might look like, that we can then discuss it more wholesomely.
Councillor Body?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Any other discussion, questions? If not seeing any, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ian. We have no delegations this morning. Determination of items requiring separate discussion. The consent agenda is there. Does anybody require any of those to be removed for further direction? Not seeing any. I'll take a motion to receive those items in the consent agenda. Councillor Nielsen, Councillor McKay. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. So that moves us to items for direction and discussion. First is the Ag Advisory Committee meeting minutes of March 5th. Would someone care to move to receive those minutes? Councillor Dickert, second by Councillor Keaveney. Thank you. Randy, do you want to speak to those minutes, please?
Thank you, Deputy Warden, and good morning, everyone. So just to provide some highlights from the Ag Advisory Committee, Laurie Smith was re-elected as chair of the committee for 2025, and Blair Freeman was elected as vice chair. There was a delegation received from Shane McKenna of Creative Polymer Solutions on behalf of Switch Energy. The companies provide recycling services for agricultural plastics, including bale wrap, and they're interested in working with municipalities and local farmers on how to make that disposal process more accessible and more efficient. The committee provided some feedback on the disposal process, including some options to explore to make the process easier for farmers. So this information and feedback received from the committee will be explored further with local municipal staff through the waste management community practice. Sarah Johnson provided an update on the reviews of the beaver, coyote, and forest management bylaws. County staff are working to organize public meetings and open houses for those respective draft bylaws that are being considered. Chair Smith suggested an open house at the Grey Egg Services Boardroom in Markdale, and staff were supportive of that approach and are happy to work with Grey Egg Services to look at an open house date and time at that location. Staff will be releasing more information on this soon, including dates, times, and information on the county's website. And then Scott Taylor provided an update on the Regional Agricultural Learning and Demonstration Site on the property to the west of Great Roots. Development on this property requires a Niagara Escarpment Plan amendment. The project has been a collaboration between the Chatsworth and Old Sound Ag Societies, the Blue Water District School Board, Grey County, including economic development, tourism, culture, and planning staff. And of course, was only made possible due to the generous land donation from Everett and Marilyn Hall. County staff, alongside Hilary Bredner from the Owen Sound Ag Society, recently had the opportunity to present to the Niagara Escarpment Commission at their February meeting. This presentation was also shared with the committee, which provided an overview of the vision for the demonstration site and outlined the process moving forward. NEC members provided some early positive feedback on the proposal, which is great, and gave direction to NEC staff to start the formal public consultation process. So we'll keep, of course, the Ag Advisory Committee and this council updated on when this matter proceeds through the Niagara Escarpment Plan Amendment process, but so far, so good. I'll turn it over to Savannah now to cover the remaining highlights of that committee.
Committee had asked for an update on the Share the Road campaign, which was an idea born out of the Ag Advisory Committee. They now know that because of its success, this is something that is core operations for economic development, tourism, culture, and communication. So it's part of our annual work plan with added campaign screen time radio in spring and fall during planting and harvest season. We also talked about the Gather campaign, which is an agriculture, food, tourism campaign, and the success that we're seeing so far, the pairings that we have made and highlighted between our agri-food producers and vendors locally, and plans of how we're going to continue that over the next several years. So they were very excited to hear that update. During the roundtable discussion, which is always the most valuable part of this committee, we did hear about tariffs and the impact. So we are constantly listening and scanning as part of that sector scan. We have staff attending multiple meetings through agriculture committees across the county over the next several months to keep listening to this and bring it back. Chair Laurie Smith also talked about the significant weather impacts on our agricultural community and the mental health concerns and impacts that is having on our farmers. There's been a lot of barns lost because of the heavy snow and a lot of real difficulty with this level of accumulation. Member Keith Reed spoke about the Conservation Authority, who is hosting an event for individuals to meet with tile drainage contractors in the region. And then we also spoke about the Youth Climate Action Fund, Town of Blue Mountains and Grey County, which is open for applications. At the end of the meeting, there was an update request about Grey County infrastructure projects and to ensure that the Ag Committee would be part of those consultations when we're thinking about long-term capital projects and infrastructure projects across the region. And that's the update.
Thank you, Savannah, and thank you, Randy, for those. Any questions or discussion regarding those minutes of that meeting? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. The next set of minutes is the Community Services Committee dated March 6th. Someone care to move receive of those? Councillor Mackey, Councillor Patterson. Welcome, Anne-Marie.
Thank you, Warden, and good morning, County Council. Our meeting again was on March 6th for the Community Services. We had elections. Councillor Nielsen was reelected as chair for the Community Services Committee, and Councillor Dickert was reelected as vice chair. We had a delegation from Public Health. Alan Hawes brought forth a presentation asking that Grey County update our smoke-free municipal space bylaw. He asked that the bylaw be modernized to include vaping and that more spaces or a regional approach be included. Staff are going to bring back a report outlining some possible options. We also had a delegation from Scott McKay from the Canadian Mental Health Association, who provided an update to the 14th Street Supportive Housing Project. He provided an overview of the supports that are being offered and some of the successes that the program is having. 8 individuals have graduated since July of 2024. The individuals that graduate to other housing are still provided supports through CMHA workers and invited to attend workshops and services back at 14th Street. Committee members discussed the opportunity for County Council to submit a delegation request to the Ministry of Health to share the successes and express a thank you for the funding support and the ongoing funding support. Melissa McCullough reviewed the Ontario Works Service Plan for 2025. The plan provides community analysis. It looks at identifying service needs and provides a service strategy, looking at outcomes for the year. And it also identifies some of the risks for achieving those outcomes. This service plan was actually just an addendum to the 2024. There were a number of changes that happened over the last couple of years. So it was more of just an addition to the actual plan. 2026 will provide a new and interesting plan because we are heading into more changes for Ontario Works when it comes to funding and service models. Josh Gibson provided a report on our community housing waitlist. Our waitlist has increased from 913 applications in 2020 to 2,272 in 2024. Just speaks to our ongoing housing crisis and the need for affordable housing. About 70% of the waitlist are Grey County residents traditionally, and our average wait time for housing has increased from 2.5 years to 4.5 years. We also had a report on the last mile funding. The county put in 3 applications. This funding was capital funding through the province to build affordable housing, focusing in on people that are in encampments or experiencing homelessness. We put in 3 applications, one for our Grey County Dundalk build for 40 units, one for our nonprofit Mam Win Win Native Homes for 3 row homes, and one for Lutheran Social Services, which is the conversion of commercial space into 3 one-bedroom units, with one of those being affordable. And we were awarded $182,000 to go towards the one affordable unit with Lutheran. This report was to sign the funding letter and to enter into an agreement with Lutheran Social Services. Construction has already started, and those 3 units should be occupied in July. We also received some correspondence from the service system manager for employment. This is a group of service managers, ourselves included, that provide oversight to the Employment Ontario services for this area. And we had a report of 2024 year in review for community services, but that was deferred till the next meeting due to time. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Are there any questions? Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you very much, Deputy Warden. Just for clarity, the motion that's requesting a staff report to come back on the smoke-free bylaw, does that come back to the committee structure? Is that going to be planned to come back to the council as a whole?
Thanks for the question, Chair. We can do either. I think my thought was that we would come back through the Community Services Committee first for a recommendation to then come forward to council.
Any other questions? Councillor DeBreen.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. And through you, a question that I didn't get to ask was, we got the funding for the last mile funding for the Ontario Community Housing Initiative for Lutheran Social. The other applications, are they still pending? Have they been denied? Is there another opportunity to reapply? What is the next step for that? Because right now we have a housing units that are not being occupied, and 40 pending. So just if you could speak to that, thank you.
It was one-time funding, so there is no more opportunity to apply for the last mile funding. MemWim actually put into a funding stream through Kochi through Aboriginal funding, and they were successful. So that build is going to go forward. And our funding, we are still working towards a application with CMHA or CMHC for the Affordable Housing Fund through the federal government. We are working with our architect right now to get to that Class B estimate and final tender drawings. And once we have that, we'll be able to apply for the funding. I think that we'll have a good opportunity with the funding. It's probably exactly what the provinces, or sorry, the federal government is looking for when it comes to sustainability and affordability and what we're doing with energy efficiency. So I think we'll be successful. It's just getting there.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Any other questions, discussion? Oh, Councillor Kentner, please.
Thank you, Deputy Warden, and through you. I had made a note during the meeting that we're headed toward a 6-year wait list. I don't know, it says in the written report 4.57 years, but can you refresh my memory what it sounded as if if a family were to sign on today for housing, it would be a 6-year wait.
So I think we're an average of 4.5, but yes, certain areas, the wait list is longer because our demand is longer, and certain housing is longer too. A 1-bedroom is our largest wait list and our most, especially in Owen Sound. So you might be looking more towards 6, but we may have housing in Holstein or somewhere that the wait list may not be quite as long. So I think you're right. Families could be waiting, or individuals could be waiting up to 6 years. But we do have an average of about 4.5 throughout the county. The last report that came from AMO, the average across Ontario is anywhere from 5 years to 20.
If I may, just I thought it was interesting that Josh said that the two factors that could influence and improve this is just simply higher income level and the fact, like, to fix the fact that there are no rent controls anymore. And I think we need to keep that in focus and perhaps think about, how we could influence the provincial government to improve the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. Any other questions? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Anne Marie. Moving on to the next report is regarding response time performance plan results of our paramedics, and Kevin will be taking that report. Someone care to move that? Councillor Eccles, Councillor DeBreen. Welcome, Kevin. The floor is yours, sir.
You want to bring up the presentation? Oh. Oh. Oh, I can't get the mouse to work. Yeah. I don't know if I have no control of it, but okay. I have my presentation back up. Okay, good morning again, everyone. Pleased to be here today to talk to you about 2024 response times. You have to, there was a motion on the floor. I forget if you, okay, good. So I just go. So the recommendation is that report PSR CW 0125 regarding the 24 response time performance plan results be received and the results be submitted to the Ministry of Health by March 31st, 2025. So each year, the county, we put forward in August a report to council to determine the next year's response time standards. And then in March of the following year, we report on the previous years. And that those response times are reported to the ministry and displayed on a public website. The response times that we have were developed in 2012. And it was based upon the response times that we were achieving at that time. The response times are measured based upon target response times across 5 acuity levels from CTAS 1 to CTAS 5. And it also includes sudden cardiac arrest, where the dispatch priority is a code 4 call. Despite our rising call volumes, we've never increased our response time. In 2016, we actually improved upon our response time for CTAS 1. It was 50% of the time in 8 minutes, and we increased that number to 60% of the time. And then in our CTAS 3, 4, and 5, it was 20 minutes. It was 30 minutes, 90% of the time, and that was reduced down to 20 minutes, 90% of the time. In 2024, the total patient call volume was 15,796, which is a 4.23% increase over the year before, which is our busiest year yet. Over the last 5 years, we've seen a 5.94% increase yearly on average. And if you think about the ORH report that was completed in 2022, they're predicting a 5.8, so we're not far off of that. We have had a couple lower years, like last year was 1.1 and this year being 4.2. It'll be interesting to see where we go forward in the next years. If it doesn't take long when you throw a 10% year in to increase those numbers, but it is something that we're looking at. So this is the slide around the response times, and you'll see our target for each of the areas, and then our performance and our 5-year average. And we're within all the targets. We've met all the response time standards for that year. In the past, we've had trouble meeting the response time for CTAS 2 in 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 90% of the time. And this is 2 years in a row we've been able to meet that. So that's very positive that we meet that and met in all areas. As far as reporting and developing response times, it is developed and reported on based upon a county, but we do break it down to show by lower tier. And it is recognized that in some areas of the county that there are lower response times than others. And we really hope to improve that based upon the ORH recommendations and us being able to move forward with the new base locations as we continue on implementing the recommendations from the comprehensive deployment review. So this year we're building the base in Feversham, and next year with approval will be Eaton, and then in 2027 Thornbury, and in 2028 Cobble Beach. So the next chart shows this, keeping in mind when you're looking at 6 and 8 minute response times, if that call doesn't happen right within that municipality, like where the ambulance base is located, it's very difficult to meet those targets. And but we do things like, and that's one of the reasons we added first response in 2019. We had a couple of years where we weren't meeting our cardiac arrests. We were up 38%. But just adding that first response unit, it keeps units from sitting halfway in between locations so they can sit right in the main centers where most populations are, where there's a greater chance of having a call. But it's a balance though, to be able to protect those areas that are most volume or about volume calls based upon our more rural areas. Where there's less calls, but definitely a lot greater distance to travel to get to them. Next slide here. This is another way we look at response times, and I would say it's probably about the best way to look at it is a 90th percentile. With the 90th percentile, it is truly what the public can expect under normal usage to get when they call an ambulance. There is an allowance for 10% for outliers, but really what this slide says from the time the paramedic gets the page, not from the time we leave the base, but from the time they get the page to the time they arrive at scene. In 2024, we were there in 15 minutes and 26 seconds. So when you think about the size of Grey County being over 4,500 square kilometers, you take a minute and a half shoot time off of that, 9 times out of 10, we're there in 15:26. Our goal is to keep that at the 15 minutes, hopefully get better than that. Again, our goal is always to get there as quickly as possible, but for these life-threatening emergencies, but overall, that's been our targets, that 15 minutes. The average response time, it doesn't tell you a ton of information because you could have, a long and a short response time in there. But it does tell you the ability or give the ability to see if your system is getting longer for calls or shorter. And I would say that we're based upon this, we're about the same as last year as far as that change goes. This year, with budget approval now, we will be starting the Feversham car. We starting June 28th. And it'll be additional 4 full-time positions. Any questions?
Thank you, Kevin. It really is remarkable that you can make those times when you consider how big our county is. You're absolutely right. It just amazes me, and all kinds of weather too. Not every day is like this one, that's for sure. Any questions? Councillor Eccles.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this, Kevin, going forward. With our hospital closures across Grey and Bruce, I'm thinking in the Chatsworth area, that may end up in the closest hospital being the Chesley Hospital, and with the emergencies closed, what effect is that going to have on covering distances that we see going forward?
The majority of this will be around the longer we're with the patient, the longer we're tied up that we can't respond to the next call. So if we have to travel further, that's where we've seen in our review is that, it does impact us as far as the longer time with the patient and the longer travel time to the hospital. And then we also, we could be taking somebody to Mount Forest, which is outside of our area, and then have to come back. So there's a few things that does cause some issues with us.
Any other questions? Yeah, well, Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. And through you, one quick question to the director. Are you able to expand somewhat on where, perhaps by location, the call volume has been most drastically increasing? Is it uniform across the county, or is there specific centers that are particularly driving that volume increase?
I actually thought I brought that with me, but I don't have it with me. But I do know that our biggest increase in call volume this year was for our Owen Sound and Hanover Station. Both of them were over 10%. Part of that, though, is because in July we upstaffed Owen Sound and Hanover. So that there alone, with that station will be doing more of those calls, which means Chatsworth's doing less calls in Owen Sound, means Durham's doing less calls in Hanover. But those typically are our busiest areas, so where we've seen the increases.
Oops.
Roughly, over 40% of our calls, just over 40% come out of the Owen Sound station. So that's why we have we have 3 cars on during the day. We have Chatsworth, but it's a balance because we, Owen Sound, they're sitting around a 7-minute 90th percentile, and then you have another place that's 19. Like you got to trade that off a bit, even though like to increase in rural, but still understand that we still have to respond where our greatest volume is too.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Councillor Mackey.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Good morning, County Council. Kevin, my question, Councillor Body brought up a good point about the quality care that our paramedics are providing in the hospital. You mentioned about the release time. Can you just comment on what work's being done with the hospital to try and get our paramedics out of the hospital in a timely fashion? Because I saw on Sunday spending a lot of time in Emerge sitting with my wife, saw how long some of our paramedics are sitting there, as well as police officers spending a lot of time. So instead of being out, on the job, they're sitting in the hospital. So what can we do, I guess, to try and get our paramedics released back to the community a little bit quicker? Thanks.
It's interesting, when we first did the deployment review, we would have the odd day where we'd have a offload delay in Owen Sound, but we didn't have a lot, like, but since that time, there has been significant increases in offload delay in Owen Sound. We do see the odd time in, in Collingwood, Meaford, sometimes Hanover. But the majority is in Owen Sound, where we could have, 2, 3, 4 ambulances tied up there. The hospital is doing everything that they can do. Like, they are working hard in this. They are a partner. Our supervisor works with the charge nurse there. So what we've done, we have what we call a fit to sit program. So there are people that use the ambulance service that are fit to sit. So that just because you call an ambulance doesn't mean that you're going to get prioritized to the back, that you'll be triaged like everybody else. And if you're fit to sit, that you will sit in the emergency room for appropriate people. We have 4 offload beds now, where we can offload patients into beds and keep care of them there. That allows the paramedics to prepare their unit and clean their stretcher and be ready for the next call while they're waiting for the patient to be accepted. We have submitted funding for 2 years now, and we're going for our 3rd year for dedicated offload nurse funding. The first year, we roughly received about a half of what we needed. Last year, we received about a quarter of what we needed, and this year we put in again for full funding to have an offload nurse 7 days a week. That money is 100% funded by the province for the hospital to staff a nurse to look after those patients. We have met with the ministry and the representatives and told them our concerns and how we don't feel that we receive the right amount of funding. Hopefully that helped. We haven't heard yet. We've resubmitted again. So there's quite a number of things. I know the hospital, they've reconfigured their emerge. They are aware of it. They are doing whatever they can. Again, we're, like transfers, if somebody, needs to get moved, generally we don't do non-emerge transfers in the middle of the night, but if it means to clear a bed, to open up another bed, working with the supervisor, we'll move somebody back. It's just stuff like that. It's a partnership.
Councillor Body.
If I can maybe hit the same topic, because I was asking at the hospital exactly that. This is a really busy day, and they said, no, actually it's not. But the beds upstairs are all full, therefore the beds all here in emergency are full, so we can't get people through. If you're closing emergency departments, justly or wherever, people are still going to have to go to emergency. So if they all end up in Owen Sound, then they're there. And the difficulty of the waiting isn't necessarily how many people that are coming in, but it's the lack of beds. And sitting there, helped me realize that there is the problem with closing emergency departments in smaller hospitals. These guys know what they're doing. If somebody needs an MRI or whatever, they know where they have to go. But if they don't need that, they need a bed, they need some, care. That's where the smaller hospitals can fill in. And I think somehow we need to look at that differently, perhaps in the region. And maybe it starts at this table. I don't know, even though we've, consistently said it's none of our business, it's not our department. But I just wonder if there isn't a way of coordinating the hospitals and the hospital systems so that all the staffing isn't at one place that pushes the volume up in that and could be spread out differently. But it's not, when it's busy, but sometimes it's the lack of beds at that one facility that everybody's coming to.
Wicked problems. Kevin, did you want to comment on that, or?
We do have the ability for the hospital to go on redirect. So they have the ability to, it's a hospital decision. They can actually redirect CTAS 3, 4, and 5 to the closest next appropriate hospital, which does help. And there are areas where dispatch will help, level out some of those areas where there's hospitals, but quite often with, 15, 20 kilometers in between, they are under the act, we have to go to the closest hospital unless there's redirect considerations, but that stuff can be looked at. It would be interesting to have conversations with the hospital corporations to see how they would support that, but it's something that we could look at.
Thank you. Okay, not seeing any other questions. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just wondered, as I read the previous report, one question that I would have, and I'd like to learn more information reporting back, would be how does the modeling and the assumptions made in the servicing study for paramedic services perform against the results in the ORH review of a few years ago? And by the way, I don't think it was noted in the presentation, but those were outstanding results, by the way. So just congratulations to yourself and the department for response times that are outstanding, coming through that report, Kevin. But this is very difficult to put you on the spot and ask you that question right now. So I'd like to make a motion that staff present a report back to council, which does speak to how the modeling and the assumptions made in the ORH study for paramedic services perform against the results which we've reported back to the province the last couple of years. As we know, it's extremely important that we maintain these response times, but it's a huge capital commitment and an operational commitment as we keep moving forward. And we've moved forward with the Durham base, the Feversham base, and in successive years to do 3 in a row. I'm just wondering if it's appropriate. I think it's appropriate that council should actually have a reporting back on where we stand in relationship to that ORH template that was to guide us a few years ago. And then we can make those subsequent decisions, whether we continue on that direct path for 26 and 8 and 27 and Thornbury or Cobble, or do we say, okay, you know what? We are actually attaining these targets. We're responding to call volume where it's coming in from the county. And perhaps those dates are subsequently 28 or 30 or 31, because we know across the county, we can't fix all the roads at the same time. We can't, you could protect residents better if you had a fire hall in every village. And you'd protect them even better if it was full-time staff. But there are limitations to what we can service. So I just think it would be appropriate that council had a report back on where we are performing against those assumptions from a couple of years ago.
Okay, I'll take all that as a motion, squish down to something, but I need a seconder before we go any further. Anyone want to second that? Councillor Eccles, you'll second that. Thank you very much. Kevin, do you want to speak to that, please?
Yes, our commitment when we did this 10-year plan, because it is a moving plan and we just do our best estimates based upon ORH. And I feel that if you look even at the numbers of the 5.9 versus 5.8, they have been in the right area so far. The 3 12-hour cars, which again, your most expensive investment is in your human resources, each car that you add, even though bases are expensive, it really is the staffing to staff those cars. The 3 cars that we implemented 2 last year and then the 1 this year were recommended for in 2022 to meet the 15 minutes. Because of budget, we'd actually push those out to 24 and 25. But what we have next year is where we don't enhance any staffing. It is just a base. I was hoping that we would be able to look at, we'll have a full year of 2 cars plus a half of a year of a car. And how does that look? Then go back to ORH, because now we're 3 going on 4 years into it. And for the next increase in resources, which is 2027, that we'd see is it required? Is it something that we need to move forward with? That was our commitment from the start, was to be able to look at that. But that was what I was thinking. But again, I'll take whatever direction you want. But right now we're really only 8 months in with 2 additional cars. Like, it's hard even for me to look at it and say it's tough right now. Like, I don't know if we've had enough time, but that 26 year where we're not doing anything as far as upstaffing our most, expensive resource, that's where I hopefully will have a year and a half and we'll be able to look at call volumes and where do we go for the next 3 or 4 years. I would hope to engage ORH again as a smaller.
Thank you, Kevin. Councillor
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I just think, as the director pointed out, in 22, it was pushed off for budget reasons. And then it was added a few years down the road, and we have been able to maintain those targets. So I just think that there is some value in council having a report back, because it has been demonstrated by staff that Not necessarily do you have to just push forward every year with these bases. There is potential to actually step back and you know, push it back a year or two here or there and reevaluate. So thanks.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion fails. Okay, thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. Okay, the clerk tells me now would be an appropriate time for a recess. I'm always up for that, so we'll recess for 10 and then we'll reconvene. Thank you.
Good morning, County Council. If I can ask everyone to take your seats after that break, thank you very much. And thank you to Deputy Warden Milne for stepping in this morning. It was an opportunity. I was asked by the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative to meet with the Canada Water Agency. And it was a vital conversation that we needed to have as a roundtable. So I can say that we were well represented there, both ourselves as Grey County, but also around Georgian Bay. We had good representation. So thank you very much for that opportunity. I knew I was leaving you in good hands with Deputy Warden Milne, and evidently the agenda does not leave much left. So thank you very much for that. So with that, we will continue to go to item 7D, which is now report PDR CW 1825, and it's with regards to the rail trail parking options. The recommended motion is that the report PDR PCD 1825 be received, and that snow removal and associated budget for plowing at the Markdale CP Rail Trail lot be considered as part of the 2026 budget discussions. May I ask for a mover and seconder to get that on the floor? Moved by Councillor Nielsen, seconder. Seconder. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. I thank you. I've got more than one seconder. I saw Councillor Pringle, so I'll take that as the seconder. Thank you. So it's now on the floor for discussion. And with that, I'd like to call upon Ms. Sarah Johnson to introduce this topic.
Thank you, Warden. I'm just going to share my screen as I'm working remotely today. Can everybody see that? All right. Thank you. Thank you, Warden, and good morning, County Council. This report has been drafted in response to a motion that was passed at the February 13th Committee of the Whole meeting, a resolution that was passed asking staff to prepare a report for options on snow removal for the Grey County owned parking lot in Markdale that's adjacent to the CP Rail Trail, and for other alternative parking options. So I'm just going to go into provide a little bit of background as to how we arrived here. So for Council's benefit, as part of the budget discussions for 2024, there was considerable discussion at the council meeting regarding trimming of this budget line, focusing on mostly on the Markdale parking lot, and staff took this direction based on these discussions that snow clearing funds would be allocated solely for the parking lot in Collapore. So based on an existing contract that was in place with a plowing contractor, the county did keep up parking this lot for the last winter season, so 23 into 2024, ending in March. But starting in this winter season, 24-25, the county has only been contracting snow removal services in Collapore, and that is how we have arrived at where we are with regards to the clearing. So we did look into some options regarding the clearing of this lot in Markdale, and we approached both our Grey County staff as well as the municipality of Grey Highlands. There was not the capacity for either of those bodies to do that work for us. We then reached out to the OFSC District 9. They also did not have funding, nor did they have the appropriate insurance or clauses in their agreement to do such work. And just on that vein, I did want to discuss a little bit regarding insurance costs as part of this snow clearing in general. We have been speaking with it at our outdoor management group, and it has been determined that these costs over the last number of years have been going up, especially for those contractors that we have relied so heavily on for clearing smaller lots. And so just taking that in mind, we have had a reduced number of contractors available for those clearing options. So just kind of jumping into we did a little bit of a cost analysis. We did reach out to the contractor that had previously been clearing, and we used the invoices that we had received from Collapore just to kind of determine roughly when they may have gone out and what it would have cost this year. So as you can see, December would have been 37.80, January 41.25, and we at the time of drafting this report, I didn't have February's, but we got it last week, and so that would have been 54.05 all plus tax. So it just kind of gives you an idea of this year, which is an unusual year. We've had a lot of snow, I think, as everybody knows. So staff do acknowledge that if we do resume in these services in 2025, it would obviously only apply to whatever is remaining in this month and April if we do continue to have some snow available, and then November, December, should we get snow in those months. So if that is the direction, staff estimate that there would be an upset limit of $10,000, and that would be from reserves, and that would probably suffice for the remainder of 2025. So we did also look into what we currently have for existing parking along the trail. So from a county perspective, we have the county lot that was recently created in Rockford at Grey Road 18, and we also have the Markdale lot that's subject to this report, neither of which are currently maintained. Alternatively, we have a few municipally owned options that include the Chatsworth Hub site and the Dundalk Medical Center as well. Now, the Chatsworth Hub site we know is maintained, but it is not directly connected to the trail, but there is access points. And then the proposed medical center is not yet up and available. Staff also acknowledge that there are some businesses or municipal parking lots that we haven't noted on this map or on this slide, including obviously local hotels and motels, as well as potentially the Bayshore in Owen Sound. The other thing that we wanted to discuss, and I realized I didn't make a slide when I put this in my report, was, and this is something that should council direct us, we can look more into, but there is other options available, including paid parking and sponsorship. So if that is something council wants us to look into, we can look deeper into that should you provide direction. Given the unpredictability of any winter season and the significant snowfall that we have had this season, staff are recommending that the report be received and that the snow removal associated with the budget for plowing at the Markdale lot be considered as part of the 2026 budget discussions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll put it out to council members if there are questions for Ms. Johnson or comments. We'll start with Councillor Nielsen, and then I see two more hands.
Thank you very much, Warden Matusoff. I think just a comment I wanted to make is that there is parking continuing on this lot this winter, even with the lack of snow. And so I'm wondering if either staff have a comment on liability of that, of having users on the spot, even when we weren't taking care of it, and if that's something that should be really taken into consideration when we debate this, and whether or not the merit is there to fund clearing it.
So I can speak to that. We did take this through you, Warden. We did take this into consideration, knowing that this lot wasn't going to be maintained this year, and spoke with legal and insurance or legal staff regarding what we should do. So we have posted a sign at the site that does indicate that there is no winter maintenance. Obviously, that hasn't stopped people. We are aware of that, but I believe that has some merit in keeping us protected from a liability perspective.
That's good. Okay, next we'll go to Councillor Mackey.
Good morning, Warden. I don't think we need to include this in the 2026 budget. I think there's other parking opportunities along the rail trail, and this is just money that we don't have to spend. in a tough budget year, we decided that we didn't require that parking, and I still believe that that's the case. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. There was a hand over here. Was it Deputy Warden? Oh, no. Oh, okay. We do have one up here on the screen. We'll go to Councillor McLean.
Well, thank you, Madam Warden and County Council. I think a few things to be noted here is the money that we have spent on that rail trail for the purpose of it being a multi-use trail, I think is something that we should, think about. Certainly, I think in the report, it talked about a direct link, which this is certainly, you can't get any more direct than this is itself. I think maybe I support the resolution that's there for to consider in the 2026 budget. I think other information may need to come, whether there's a delegation from the snowmobile president, maybe to add, or even the president of the OFC from Ontario, because I think once they crunch the numbers from the province, you'll see that the huge impact that the economic of the trails running this year. We've had some tough years regards to snow and the trails, but certainly from the business point, and more importantly, what's going on in our climate right now as far as economics, anything that will help small business is certainly a positive thing. And but I think in the sense of looking at the dynamics of plowing that, certainly I don't know if there would be something that would be connected to when the trail system is open, because we have had other years where the trails haven't, I think it mentioned in the report, the trails were only open for 2 weeks. Was it last year? We knew that was quite a mild winter. Well, it doesn't make sense to somebody to go out there and plow an inch of snow if the trail system's not open. So I don't know if there's a way to connect it a little bit more, or there's maybe a little bit more emphasis on, if there's 4 or 5 inches of snow, it needs to be plowed. But if there's 2 inches of snow and the trail system's not open, and I know that may be hard to regulate, but in a sense that, economic development is something that we're a big part of in Grey County. And I think for the small part of the ability to provide space for those that do use the trail and do provide, not only or I guess in the sense of filling up their machine, but accommodations and restaurants and that. And it's just not like it's just in one part of the county. The trail system provides right up to Owen Sound. And I would like to, I don't know if there is some numbers that we can, have later on this year in the sense of the impact that the snowmobile trail being open for a longer period has had. I think that's good numbers that we need to have. We won't have that yet. So in a sense, Madam Warden, I think with regards to the motion that is on the floor should be supported with more information to maybe reinforce the discussion at the budget time. Also, in most cases, from my experience, from what I know, and maybe others can add to this, a lot of times your snowmobile trail doesn't get going maybe before Christmas. It all depends on the snow. And I don't know, this year was a year that we did get quite a bit of snow, but on December 28th, we had a 10-degree plus day, which I think pretty well took all the snow away. So, probably your core months would be January and February when you get, the most snow. We've had, more snow this year. I know I was looking at my photos and we had snow on the 29th of November. So, but, it does take time, maybe not so much in our region, but other areas for, the cold weather to set in, to freeze up water courses, certain water areas and stuff like that. So you may get a snow in the early seasons, but this trail system, and that would be information I think that you could source out from the snowmobile clubs, is when is that core time on the average, when that the trails are open. And it's pretty tough, I think, over the last few years to see something open before Christmas. And if it is open, and that's a bonus, and that type of thing. So, I would look at it if we, could consider this in the 2026 budget, that there would be some consideration on the sense that, the primary part of plowing that would be for that when the trail system's open, and I know that may be hard, but anyway, those are my comments, Madam Warden, and I think that, you know, supporting this now with more information to come for that 2026 budget would be appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We do have some other hands raised, so we'll go to Councillor Gregg next.
Well, I'm going to disagree with the comments I just heard. I'll still have lunch with my colleague when he's next in the chambers. But last year, I'm reminded that you spoke to council and you were the individual wanting the lowest tax increase that we could provide for the residents. I remember that vividly. But whether I brought motions forward that was looking to remove the remuneration for alternate councillor, or the bus route that ran from Flesherton to Hanover, which you supported, it's been hard for me to see where you are dedicated in helping council find areas to remove or reduce the increase to the budget. I think the language
point of order there, Madam Warden. That's sort of penciling me out specifically. I'm talking in general here. I mean, there's a lot of discussion you can have during a budget process.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McQueen. I am going to remind members of council, if we could just please stick to the topic that is here, that we've moved. The motion that is on the floor is just simply to consider this in the 2026 report. All comments should be directed specifically to the particular topic that's engaged, which is the rail trail parking options at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you for setting me straight. I would like to note that I think the investments in the rail trail are a little outside of the winter seasons. The snowmobile season is different than the granular base and improvements that were largely made on the trail, and I've cycled it. 2 weeks ago, I was at Glenelg and made a contribution to park at the cross-country ski trails there, which are an expense that is assumed by the ski club, and I'm glad to do that. I think I struggle with, and I agree with Councillor Mackey's comments. I don't think it's I don't support putting this in the budget. I think for the most part, most residents of Grey County wouldn't support putting this in the budget. I would support looking at paid parking further, because for me to read that, let's see, there was language about affordability being a concern, but largely we might be speaking about people who are driving expensive pickup trucks with a trailer with a $10,000 to $15,000 snowmobile. I would politely disagree with language that paying for snow removal is unreasonable. I think that's absolutely reasonable and akin to various other organizations who ask their membership to pay for use. Chatsworth, we learned at the last time we discussed this meeting, municipally, they cover some snow removal to encourage parking. And I think if you're that dedicated in Markdale, perhaps you look further at that possibility. There's opportunities here in Owen Sound as well. One of the motels is well serviced. Snowmobilers park there. But I think if anything, we should be looking at a paid parking model. If the snowmobile trails are closed, then you just put a sign up and the parking lot's closed. I don't think it has to be that difficult.
Okay, thank you. I see a pause and hands around the council table. I'm going to look to CAO Wingrove.
Thank you, Madam Warden. A couple of things. First of all, just for council's interest and awareness, we are working on a staff report that will talk about what our kind of winter experience was this past winter. How did the amount of snow that we received, how does that really compare in a historical context, and what some of the impacts to the county have been across a number of different departments. So we are bringing something forward to that effect, just for your interest. With regard to the specific situation and the parking lot, in my mind, I wonder if this isn't a service level discussion. And I think one of you brought up the point that, for those times where there really has been a significant snowfall, maybe it makes sense to clear at that time And there's less of a need to be doing this on a recurring basis, but I will look to Sarah in a minute to make a comment about our ability to contract snow clearing services on an as needed basis, because I know, you know, we've run into it with parking lots and that given the insurance costs and everything that the operators incur, it's very difficult to get someone to sign up to come 2 or 3 times a year. They want the whole contractor. It just doesn't make financial sense to them, but I'll get you to comment on that in a second, Sarah. The other point that I would make, and now I'm into Savannah's territory, like tourism is a competitive business. We are, you know, people are deciding where to go and how to spend their money. The infrastructure that's available in a particular location is an important part of why people decide to come or not come. And so, you know, maybe it would also be helpful to have a better understanding of how this matter's dealt with in other jurisdictions. What does Muskoka do? What does Huntsville do? What do the other places do where people might decide to go there as opposed to come here? Maybe that would be helpful, but we could bring all of that information forward in the budget deliberations if that's what you chose to do, or we could bring it in a separate report. Thanks. And maybe Sarah about the contract.
Okay, Ms. Johnson? Sure,
Through you, the warden. Obviously, it's not something we have investigated or had any discussions with contractors about. I think given the discussions that purchasing staff had with the previous contractor, there was interest in restarting a contract. But I would think there might be some difficulties as the CAO has pointed out, procuring somebody just to do it on a on-call basis. And again, there could be some difficulties from an insurance and liability perspective if we're only clearing it at certain times. There is a standard, as I understand, that needs to be adhered to if we are clearing it. I think some discussions that I had with legal staff was either we're clearing it or we're not. So it does make it a little bit more challenging. It's certainly something that we can look further into.
Okay, thank you. And if I could just take a moment to offer the floor to Director Myers.
Thank you very much. I think Kim's point about looking at what other jurisdictions do does make sense. We know that the snowmobiling season is very hit and miss, and we are well known for being one of the most popular snowmobiling destinations. Region 9 is something that people will travel for, but we have had years past where we have maybe opened for a couple of weekends, and others like this one that has been substantial. So I think looking at all of the other jurisdictions and what they do, how they work with their private sector, how they work with community organizations to better understand and bring that back for council's consideration would be important.
Okay, and let me just pose the question then too to CAO Wingrove then, with the kind of contextual information such as the impact of this winter on all of our operations and services. The motion that's on the floor is to consider it within the 2026 budget discussions. Do you need further direction that might need to be in the form of an amendment to the main motion in order to add that? Or as you said, is that work that's already in place, doesn't need direction from council because it will be happening?
Should council decide to support the motion that's on the floor, I would think that staff is here and has heard the discussion and would be prepared to have those conversations and provide that information at the time that the budget deliberations take place. If you would rather not, if you don't support this, then you could then have a second resolution that just asks us to bring back the information. At any time we could do that.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just looking for any further hands in terms of first comments. We'll go to Councillor Dobreen.
Thank you, and through you. I was wanting to feed off of the paid parking aspect that Councillor Gregg mentioned, and it's mentioned here in the report, paid parking and sponsorship. And in conversation with my colleague, we're reminded that our conservation authorities have a paid system, whether that is a seasonal permit, a monthly permit, a daily parking, and it helps tremendously with revenue generation to help cover the costs of the snow clearing in these various parking lots. So through you, Madam Warden, with the report that staff are working on, would staff require direction to include paid parking exploration and or will that be part of the exercise for our budget deliberations? Because I'd be prepared to provide that direction if needed.
We'll go to the Deputy CAO.
Thank you, Madam Warden, through you, to the question. I think it'd be helpful if council is interested in exploring that as a potential option to provide separate direction to staff, and then we bring back a report. It's also noted in the report that we, of course, have the building and facilities manager that's scheduled to also be onboarded this year. And as part of that work is to look at all the snow clearing that we do in all of our buildings and facilities throughout the county, and look for opportunities for efficiencies and other options as well. So I'd once that person's onboarded, and as well as maybe if there's direction to look at paid parking as another option for at some of our obviously parking lots and facilities, I'd like to look at that comprehensively with staff and with that new building facilities manager. But again, if that's what council's looking for, I'd ask for maybe a separate motion and to direct staff to bring back a report regarding that, which the hope would then be prior to our budget deliberation, so you have that information.
Okay, follow up, Councillor Dobreen.
Thank you, through you. So a separate motion, not an amendment to this staff report. Thank you.
Okay, next we'll go to Councillor Eccles.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Just a statement. I would support this coming forward into 2026. Sorry, 2026. Conversation's been going along and I've lost time. In 26 I look forward to that discussion, because we're talking about what it's going to cost us. We've had a report earlier in the day that we received on the consent agenda about our climate action plan and what it's costing us to clear all of these parking lots. So how many other parking lots are there in the area of that trail? Specifically, do we do this? As I said, I want to see this come out, because this is going to be a larger discussion when it comes to us climate action and climate action and CO2. Is there any electric snowmobiles out there just yet?
Okay, thank you. Any other first comments from any council members? Okay. I do see Councillor McQueen's hand up, but he has spoken already, so I'm just going to give the floor to anyone else that wishes first comments. Okay, so in a round of second comments, then I will look to you, Councillor McQueen, for a brief second comment.
Okay, thank you, Madam Warden. A lot of good conversations made, and certainly from a budget perspective, we've had quite a few tough years. And I guess I look at, is it worth the investment of investing in this to the payback? And from tourism and economics, I think that's something we could get further information on. In the last quite a few years, a lot of people with those new trucks and trailers and snowmobiles head north and spend a lot of money up there. And this was an opportunity for those to spend some money locally, because we have had the snow. So you look at that, and I think you need to talk to some of those businesses that were the recipients of that, of a good year. I think that's something that needs to come back in the report. So that point, I look, is the investment. Certainly all options of paid parking lot and all that kind of stuff, sponsorship, I think should be looked at. There's nothing wrong. I mean, there's only one taxpayer, so we have to look at the investment and how we go about, doing that. And I think that's something that is certainly has a lot of merit. Also, I think in the sense of fairness, in the sense it does show that we do clear another parking lot. And so, I think in the sense of fairness, and I think this goes back to what the CAO is and has mentioned about the service levels and, across the board and a lot of different things. So, yeah, I mean, I think this needs to move forward. There's a lot of options on the table, and it'd be good to get some of that information back from the tourism side and how much that investment has been in Grey County. If something's not available and people come and so they'll just move to some other community and spend their money. So I think that's something that is something that to keep in mind as well. So had it been closer to where I live, I would have probably plowed it one day just to help out, because I understand there's been others that have done that for free as well. So just because, and I'm not an avid snowmobiler. I don't submit to having a pass and do that because I'm too busy doing other stuff. But I just think in the overall picture, I think it's something that needs further discussion and conversations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of liability, we do have to caution people not to be benevolent and try to help out in other ways rather than communicating directly with Grey County. So thank you for those comments. So we have heard from staff that should this motion not go forward, that an alternate motion can be presented that would provide the direction to staff that we would need. It's relevant to the report. It doesn't need to be as a whole separate notice of motion. This is something that is depending on how this motion goes, we will need to see what we do with this information, what we do with this report. So I think it's appropriate. So at this point in time, I don't see any further hands up for second or first comments. So I will call the vote. All those in favor of the motion that's on the floor. Okay, I see that this motion has failed. Okay, thank you. So with that then, an alternate motion to put on the floor. Councillor Dobreen, you had offered to put something forth.
Thank you. And I'm through you to the clerk for their word magic. I was in favor of having further discussions. So I would like to, thank you very much, that staff be directed to bring back a report prior to 2026 budget discussions containing options for, I would suggest parking revenue options for parking revenue along the trails. I think it behooves us to look at all of our parking locations, and rather than limiting ourselves to the Markdale location. And I think if that's generic enough, I would so move that for further debate.
Okay, thank you. So let me just read that motion then to look for a seconder. That staff be requested to incorporate information on paid parking possibilities for options for parking revenue along the trails. So with that, I'll look for a seconder. It's seconded by Councillor Mackey. So now this motion is now on the floor for discussion. Any discussion? We'll go to Councillor Greig.
Happy to support the motion that's on the floor. I think it's a good motion from Councillor Dobreen. People are happy to contribute to some of the natural resources which are made available to them. And by not limiting it to just one specific Markdale parking lot is the right decision. The great majority, I'm willing to bet, of users at Colaport would be happy to contribute to if there was some sort of a system that the county was to create, because it's certainly been demonstrated at Grace Harbor Conservation Authority. It's been a valued proposition for revenue generation, and people are happy to contribute for the property use.
Okay, thank you. Other members of council? We'll go to Councillor Dobreen.
Through you, I just wanted to elaborate somewhat in that consideration can be given to Grey County residents who would benefit from a discounted fare or non-fare daily. But all of those things could be considered through the research by staff with other organizations that have a system in place.
Okay, thank you. So we can leave that discussion in the ears of staff that are concerned who would be involved in producing that report to explore those options. Not seeing any further hands, Madam CAO or any senior management staff, any additional comments? No? Okay. All right then. I think we're ready to call that question. All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, that allows us to go into closed session matters, and the recommendation is that the committee of the whole does now go into closed session pursuant to section 239 2B of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended to discuss one item, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and with regards to the CAO contract. Thank you. We'll take a moment to allow everyone to leave the room. Oh, sorry. Well, the active, it's okay. Keep moving. I can see lots of people moving, but we do need to vote on that. So may I ask, so it's first of all, moved by Councillor Eccles, seconded by Councillor DeBreen. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So council did meet in closed session and I have a reporting out statement to read. Council, having received notice that the CAO, from the CAO that her contract will end May 2nd, 2025, is pleased to announce that Randy Schertzer will step into the CAO role at that time, and staff have been directed to begin the recruitment process for a new deputy CAO. So there will be, we have a number of council meetings between now and May 2nd, but I do want to say on behalf of all of County Council that at this point in time, I think that we want this moment to really recognize 9.5 years that the CAO Windgrove has contributed to Grey County. CAO Windgrove, you have been a tremendous asset to our county. I am so profoundly grateful, and all of council are, for the knowledge and professionalism and passion that you bring, that you have brought to this role. And I can truly say that I have recognized in you, in your leadership, that it's not just with your hands and your head and all that expertise that you bring to the table, but it's been with your heart as well. We very much appreciate that. Your strategic thinking leads by example, and you have demonstrated that in the way that you have motivated the senior management team. And we feel completely as a council encircled by the expertise that sits here. And that is because of the way that you have been able to motivate your senior management team to rise up to their best, their 150% in their positions, because that is what you have delivered to us each and every day. We will miss you, but we do recognize and respect that this is your moment to begin a new chapter in whatever way or form that has, and that you need that space to be able to, recognizing the fact that true to your leadership, you are leaving us in excellent hands with Randy Schertzer. You have been working in co-leadership for some time now together in these roles as Deputy CEO and CAO, and that allows us as a council to feel that we are confidently in good hands to be able to continue on with the work that has been done over this last decade. So thank you very much for that. We appreciate that. And we do look forward to continuing in our current role formation until closer to May 2nd, when we would like the opportunity to provide some further comments on the contribution that you have made.
Thank you all so much. My gratitude and the honor, the profound honor it's been to serve everyone in Grey County, to work with the team that I have, and to learn from and work with each one of you has been really the joy of my life and my career. And I am so grateful for everything, all of the time that I've spent here. Thank you all so very much. And I know the next 6 weeks are going to fly by, but there's a lot of work to do, and we'll be getting to that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, CEO. At this point in time, We will need to move on to any other business, and I will begin other business with just recognizing that we do have a notice of a special joint county of Gray meeting. A special council meeting regarding centralized planning services will be held virtually at 10 a.m. on Friday, March 21st, 2025. This meeting will be held jointly with the County of Gray and all member municipalities in Gray County and will be live streamed on the Gray County YouTube channel. An agenda and report will be made available on March 14th, 2025. With that, I'll ask if there is any other new business. Okay, we'll go to Councillor Eccles.
Thank you. And I'd like to, I'm not sure just procedurally how this correct will be, but the lady sitting beside you, Madam Warden, is going to tell me if I'm offline. And I respect that very much, Tara. Coming up, and I believe it is a week from this coming Saturday, one of the most revered politicians that has come out of Gray County ever would be her birthday. Of course, I'm talking about Agnes MacPhail. And I would like to have Gray County, because there's no real recognition that we can make it Agnes MacPhail Day across Canada, but I would certainly like to, and it pains me to say this, but follow from the City of Toronto that declares a proclamation that I'm stuck because I can't find the exact, and I forgot the exact date. I think it's March 24th is Agnes MacPhail Day in Gray County.
Okay, Madam Clerk, I'll look to you. Sorry, is there further? Okay, he says no, not at this moment. So, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. And through you, in 2024, staff report was brought forward with a draft proclamation and a proclamation policy. And council's position at the time was that proclamations wouldn't be made. So to move forward with any proclamations, we would need council support to kind of step outside of that policy. And I would suggest that perhaps a notice of motion would be the best approach to bring that forward.
Okay, we'll go to Councillor Dobreen.
If not out of order. There is a celebration of Agnes MacPhail's birthday on March 23rd at the Annesley United Church from 2 to 4 p.m. where we can recognize her. They do this annually in Markdale at the Annesley United Church, 2 to 4 p.m. And short of a proclamation, our communications team are very good about drawing attention and sharing good news information about past dignitaries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that's something that can happen. Certainly being able to share the information about that upcoming community event would be very helpful for anyone interested in Gray County. So Madam Clerk, you're just proposing that should we actually want to entertain a proclamation, it should be served as a notice of motion. Okay. So with that, is there any other business before I move on to notices of motion? Okay, all right, then I will move on. Oh, sorry, Councillor McLean. Do we see a hand go up? Oh, yes.
Yep. Sorry.
There you are.
So on hang on, I just got to get the date, but the Gray County Federation of Ag will be hosting the Meet the Politician meeting at Elmwood a week from this Saturday. I'm just double checking my calendar here. And that will be probably quite a few other people have attended, but it's the Grey Bruce Federation of Ags Meet the Politician meeting. Everybody has been invited. If you haven't determined that, please let Jackie or myself know if you're going to be attend, because then we'll provide you with some lunch. And it's an annual event, and it starts at 10 o'clock. at Elmwood, the Elmwood Community Center, and I know quite a few around the Horseshoe have attended in the past, but again, just throwing it out there just as a reminder.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so seeing no other business hands raised, then we'll move on to notices of motion. Item number 10. Are there notices of motion to serve? Councillor Eccles.
I'd like to put forward the notice of motion for the proclamation of declaring it's March 23rd or 24th. A day for recognizing Agnes McPhail in Grey County.
Okay, so thank you for serving that notice, and the clerk can check in with you about the exact wording. Any other notices of motion? Not seeing any online, not seeing any here in the chamber. In that case, then we can proceed on then with a motion to adjourn. May I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Warden moves and Councillor Patterson seconds. All those in favor? And our committee of the whole is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.